the opinions that other DFS analysts out there cower in fear when they even think about. I'm Chris Spags, joined as always by the top DFS player in the world, the namesake of this YouTube channel and our website at Osmo.com, Alex Osmo Baker. How are you doing, Alex?
Doing great, man. I think that this week could be the ticket. It's been a couple slow ones for me, but I see we're back to a 13 game slate, and 13 is my lucky number.
You are a contrarian man, much like this show. So 13, very lucky. And also a guy we are joined by this week who has no 13s in the number that he's known for, better known as Brick75 online. But Brian Hooper is his real name. Brian, you are a top 10 DFS player in the world. Welcome on the Contrary. The second time this season, we've had two top 10 DFS players. So welcome aboard.
Thanks for having me. I have a touch of what is it, triskaidekaphobia? So I'm the opposite of Alex. I have a little fear of the number 13.
So that's perfect. So you guys can butt heads about the number 13 right away. But of course, real fast, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor here, Fantasy Draft. FantasyDraft.com is the official home of rake-free DFS. They're also the home of the Hooters main event, the largest rake-free DFS contest you will find in the NFL's Week 14. Let's go check them out right now at FantasyDraft.com or download the Fantasy Draft app. Use the promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, for your free 7-day trial into the world of rake-free DFS. Alex, it's that time. You're playing a lot of rake across the industry. With all the rake you could have paid this week, how many Hooter wings could you have bought if you had just played entirely on Fantasy Draft?
Man, I would be about I'd be a few pounds heavier every single week if I spent all the money I'm winning on Fantasy Draft because of their no rake structure on wings. I think it would equal like hundreds of wings every week because each contest you play on Fantasy Draft is like $1 or $2 you're saving or winning, and the going rate of wings is about $1. So it's pretty easy conversion there.
Oh, also, we are apparently, I see now your tweet that we are on a different link, so I'm dropping the link in the current YouTube chat. Hopefully people will figure this out.
Yeah, that's my fault. Sorry, guys.
That's what happened when Josh is gone. It all goes. It's unfortunately the way of the world, but we're doing our best. So sorry about that, guys, but the link should be coming now. So we'll give these guys a second to matriculate. But Brian, let's talk about you a little faster because people may not be familiar with you, but you are the number 6 ranked player according to one of the sites out there that ranks people. Who knows who it could be? It could be any site out there that ranks DFS players. But Brian, how'd you get to this point? Because you've been, I would say, a lot of the other guys out there put themselves out a bit more, or perhaps just kind of become cult heroes. But you've kind of been operating, doing your own thing without getting a lot of that negative blowback or a lot of that attention that these guys get. So how did you find yourself with this rise to being a top 10 DFS player?
I'm sorry, I lost you at the end there.
How are you feeling? How are you feeling, I guess, about this rise to being a top 10 DFS player? And how do you feel about kind of maintaining your own, I guess, your own, not anonymity, but your own, maybe not being as ballyhooed or hyper-analyzed like the McLovins this week or the Chipotle addicts of the world?
Yeah, I kind of purposely was trying to keep a low profile. And I just changed that recently. A couple weeks ago, I actually started a YouTube channel. And I've done a couple videos about DFS on there. And today I'm just getting a text message that I think I got hacked. So maybe this was a mistake and I should just leave this feed right now. But yeah, so I kind of just didn't do any pub at all and just kind of grinded my way here. And it's tough, man. These guys are really good and real smart. And so I am just keep trying to improve every single day. And here I am.
So what would you say is your big lesson? I mean, or is there even a big lesson? I think for NFL in particular, or anything that you found that maybe you think has given you a bit of an edge or something that you think might help people's process out there? Has there been any sort of one thing that you would give to people out there to be like, here's one thing I picked up, which just took me way too long to figure out?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything like that for you?
Yeah. For me, it's, I would always give people the advice of make their own projections, even if they kind of base them off of Alex's or something, to kind of differentiate yourself. And it helps, I think, build like when you first start off making your own projections, it's like a helpful learning process at the very least, right? Maybe don't use them right away, try them out, compare them to Alex's or whoever else's, but especially with less popular sports like PGA, tennis, for example, you can probably make a decent amount on just accurate projections alone. without ownership or anything like that. But the problem with these more popular sports is everyone's getting so good that you can't really just use projections anymore. I would still try to make your own, but you do have to take, in my opinion anyways, the next step to figuring out every single little edge you can, correlations, how to use ownership percentage, and any of the popular ideas that Alex talks about all the time.
So was there something, do you have in your background? I know, Alex, I mean, you might have some thoughts about the projections thing too, but was there anything in your background that made you more inspired, or do you have a coding background or any sort of mathematical background that made you think like, I want to build my own projections because I feel like this will give me a bit more of an edge in the process?
Yeah, I was a professional poker player until Black Friday, until 2011. And so I've had a lot of gambling experience. But also before that, I went to college to I was kind of the whole Billy Ball. Actually, I'm wearing a Billy Ball shirt right now. A sabermetrics guy in like the early 2000s when that was coming around. I got all the Bill James manuals and stuff like that. And I went to college for sports management and then started working in minor league baseball after that. Okay. And that was my ticket in, right? Because I wasn't a baseball player. I wasn't good enough to play baseball. And so that wasn't going to get in. I didn't know anybody. So I figured, well, maybe I could use this to kind of get a job in baseball. And that didn't happen. Especially back then, they were not into sabermetrics. One of my bosses was used to play for the Cleveland Indians, and he was the manager of the team I was working for. And I got a meeting with him, and I said, hey, here's what I want to do. And I laid out some like simple sabermetrics things, like how you could judge wins from runs and stuff like that using like a logarithm. And so anyways, and he goes, Brian, here's how you judge a player, the shape of his jaw. And I go, and this guy was like half illiterate too. And I was like, I'm like, I guess this is it. And I quit like 6 months later and started playing poker. And here I am. But I was like, there's no way I'm going anywhere with these guys.
What was the ideal jaw shape? Like a square jaw?
Yeah, this was the early mid 2000s. I can't remember. He gave an example. I want to say like John Smoltz or something, but like I can't remember who he picked out. But yeah, it was isn't that old racist science where the shape of the head is how you judge a person or something like that? Yeah, that's literally what he was advocating.
Yo, Brian, can you please keep this on the down low, because you're about to ruin the secret to the whole site.
I mean, look, John Smoltz is a great jaw. I'm looking at photos right now. I mean, the beard helps out too, so I don't know. I don't know how good a jaw actually is. We need to see that stripped down first if we're going to judge.
Yeah. I kind of want to say the guy's name, but he was really special.
I mean, nobody's he's not going to know. You might as well.
His name was Kevin Romberg. He played for the Indians for like a year, and he's known for being the most superstitious player to ever play in the MLB. And there was actually a book written, and I think he was the top ranked superstitious person. Wow. He always had to touch the person last if they touched them. So Rick Sutcliffe played a prank on him. So like when he was going to the bathroom, he touched his foot underneath the stall and took off. So he had no idea who touched him last. He had to touch every player in the organization. He went in the other dugout and started touching people. This was my boss.
That is crazy. Well, he has a Wikipedia page, so if you want to check out Kevin Romberg, he is out there. Apparently not managing anymore, so I guess the jaw thing didn't work out for him. But
and then Spags, I just sent you a screenshot for my fantasy drafts rake savings last year.
Wow, that is so Brian saved
not last year, last month. Sorry.
That's just one. All right. So you saved $57,000 in rake. So that is proof of the concept that Fantasy Draft works. You can see it in our premium Slack right now, which also you can get in on. It is a helpful tool for both NBA and NFL. Use the promo code Contrarian right now and get half off your first month at osmo.com/join. And you can see Brian's screenshot in there where he did in fact save $57,000. Great saving. What do you do with that $57,000, Brian?
I give it to Papa Gates.
Just bought lineups off of him, right?
Yeah.
So let's just talk about the slate. I want to talk about the line, but we'll talk about that perhaps throughout the show. But guys, hit that like button too. We change streams here because that just happens sometimes with our tech stuff. But hit the like button; it helps us out quite a bit. And let's get into the slate, and we'll talk about your imposters out there at some point during the show.
All right.
San Francisco at New Orleans. I think the first game we should hit on here. We should be getting a run of ownership at some point if we haven't gotten it already during this intro. Oh, we actually got it 10 minutes ago, so let me put it in. But looks like some of our chalkiest players of the week are going to be in this game. Though they have come down a little bit, but Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara are going to be guys who have a good amount of ownership on them. It's trickled down a little from earlier in the week, but still going to be appreciable for these two guys. Prices are down for them. So, Alex, I'll ask you first, how do you feel about this matchup for these guys? Because San Francisco has been a really tough defense, just not giving up a lot of yardage. We saw Lamar Jackson have some success, but he's kind of a unique creature. So how are you feeling about, in terms of DFS, how are you feeling about this spot here for the Saints going against San Francisco at home?
I want to keep it short and simple. I mean, this spot sucks. The Saints, they're only projected to score 23 points this week. That's far below like an average week. San Francisco's pass defense is the second best in the league, and they're not great versus the run. So maybe some of the running backs on New Orleans can get it going. But the problem is Alvin Kamara's value really isn't great in the run. It's more in the passing game. So I think that not a whole lot to be excited about other than the fact that these are great players to begin with.
Ryan, how are you feeling about this one here? We have New Orleans going to have some ownership on Kamara and Thomas and not much else here. And the Niners really not giving up much in terms of passing yards on the year, just 134 passing yards per game. New Orleans offense is pretty high powered though, and they are a good scheme team. So how are you feeling about these guys' prospects?
I just ran a crunch and I got some Jimmy G to Kittle. Jimmy G's, it looks like he's pretty low owned, but other than that, not much other than some single Thomas and Kamara.
Do you feel like Thomas is priced fairly enough for this matchup, Brian? The fact that he's priced down, I mean, would you be willing to take more stabs at him as a one-off or whatever? Given that the field's going to be 15% on him, do you feel like that ownership is low, high, or do you imagine it'll just be kind of in line with it?
Yeah, it's well, because since we have 13 games, it's going to be a little lower than it normally would, but that's still pretty low, and it's not going to kill him. And so the way I do it, anyways, he's gonna end up being in some of my lineups.
Alex, here's a question for you, because I think with the price points, Thomas has dropped and another guy, Devontae Adams, has come up quite a bit. These guys, I think, we have seen much higher prices for Thomas throughout the year, much lower prices for Adams as the run game has been more of a focus for Green Bay. Which of those two guys do you prefer? We don't usually do these either or type things, but I feel like with those prices close and these guys kind of have similar roles, which guy would you want more?
So, I think you're asking me. I think Alex told me we would do a fade of the week, and I think Devontae Adams is my fade right now.
Oh, okay. Alex, how do you feel about this one, Thomas or Devontae Adams?
I think I'd go with Thomas as well. I think Thomas just he gets way more targets, and he's an incredible player. He catches 80% or more of his passes every season. And he's averaged over 100 yards per game last time I checked. So that's much higher than Adams. So even though the matchup is much tougher versus San Francisco, I'm leaning towards Thomas. And I like the fact that this game's competitive, where Green Bay versus Washington, strong chance that they don't have to pass the ball a lot of times.
That makes sense. And I think one thing I'm going to throw in there, which not something I have a ton of faith in, but I did hear in one of the Ringer NFL podcasts. And as I mentioned sometimes on the show, there are a couple of podcasts I listen to that I find add actual value to my process. So the Ringer NFL ones, not their fantasy one. I think that one actually kind of sucks, but that one and Christopher Harris's podcast, they were talking about the Ringer podcast about how San Francisco plays a lot of zone defense, and New Orleans has had a lot of success in the past against zones, Michael Thomas in particular. I don't know that that's something that's going to make me change my approach much. I think the projection's still fine enough on Thomas, but apparently it is a thing that New Orleans has had a good amount of success over the years, including in the playoffs last year against zone defenses. And maybe there's some way for them to beat San Francisco, but on paper, it seems like about as brutal of a spot as you can find. Let's keep going down the slate here. This game should have a little more production, we would hope. Indianapolis at Tampa Bay. Once again, we get our Sophie's choice of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, which is more of a coin flip this week because the guys are priced very comparably. And also, I'm intrigued by the Indianapolis pass game. Jack Doyle had a monster game last week. No Eric Ebron in the mix. He's out for the year now. So, Alex, I'll ask you first. This game, is it appealing to you at all? And what would you do with the Godwin or Evans choice this week?
Yeah, absolutely. I might have to check my top stacks tool to make sure there are no bugs because Tampa Bay seems to be one of the top 2 teams every single week that they're playing. And I think a lot of it is like, first of all, they're not that good, so they're never projected to run away with the game. Indianapolis is a good but not great team, so I think that this should be a competitive game. And so much of the production is concentrated in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I think that one mistake a lot of people make is they'll try too hard to figure out, is Evans a better player, is Godwin a better play. Sometimes you just have to accept that you don't know. uh, there's a limit to how much you can apply logic in fantasy. So I'm just gonna take shots on both guys, or maybe even have them in the same lineup. Because if Godwin and Evans have a great game on the same day, then Jameis Winston will be mandatory to win a GPP.
Ryan, how are you feeling about the Tampa Bay pass game here? And who would you prefer out of Godwin and Evans, or how would you handle that approach if you're going to have a mix of both guys?
I have them both about 10%. And let me see how many I have. And generally I'm gonna either have both of them together or one running back from Indiana. And so since Indiana's kind of so weak in the pass game, I'm gonna probably have more 2-man stacks of the same wide receiver than I would otherwise would with like a different type of situation, a different team. And the guy and this might not hold, but I'm seeing Marcus Johnson as like a cheap run back option. At 2.5% ownership, or even less than that. If you look elsewhere as well.
Alex, how do you feel about the pass game for Indianapolis? Because I'm intrigued by them. Brissett has shown some upside. He is priced up for this matchup, and your projections don't have him as that great of a value relative to this price. But to me, that does kind of give him some appeal where I think, if we're adjusting for randomness and all that, I think I'll end up with some Brissett. And I think it's a more obvious stack here. We have Pascal and Doyle going to be getting the lion's share of work here. Again, no Eric Ebron, no T.Y. Hilton again this week. So I'm intrigued by the stack of Indianapolis. Would you be one you want to go to, Alex?
Yeah, I think I probably wouldn't stack up the team because they do run first, really. So it's not the ideal team to stack up with Brissett. But I think that Chester Rogers being put on the IR is a benefit to guys like Paris Campbell and Marcus Johnson. And then Ebron also being out, that really benefits Doyle and everyone else that's running out there for passes. So I think that all these guys might be a little bit better than they would be otherwise.
And Doyle, real fast, I think we should talk about him because it looks like he's going to be one of the chalk tight ends of the week. Also, whoever's running the Osmo handle right now, I said the joke Dave's Food in response to Dave as a promo code in the other stream. So that's not a real promo code. Whoever's running it seems to be confused. That was a joke in response to Dave. So just want to help them out fast. But anyway, I'm not even explaining that joke. One of our guys, Dave, posts bad food pics in Slack. That was the joke. That's it. Anyway. Indianapolis, I just will say for me, I will have some Brissett this week. I'm a little more intrigued by it just because Tampa Bay's run defense is so good. I mean, granted, Indianapolis, as Alex mentioned, has been committed to the run. Their 47% run rate is one of the higher marks in the league, but I do think that defense has been a funnel towards the pass game, and I'm intrigued by the idea of them passing. And Indianapolis has shown an ability to pass when they know they just can't get the run game going. Did it against Houston. That was one of the weeks I had Brissett. I'm willing to go back there this week. Let's move on here. Another big game, which fantasy-wise could be intriguing, but it does seem more of a really good real-life game. Kansas City at New England. They're just under 50 expected points in this rematch of last year's AFC title game. And I think the question right here, right away, Alex, is going to be, are there any must-haves in this game? Who do you like the most out of Kansas City side or New England?
So this is one instance where I think that my logic would lead me to think that Kansas City is not the greatest play because New England's pass defense is so good. But then when I actually look at the numbers, I found that Kansas City is still, despite the tough matchup, has a great chance of being the top stack of the week. So I think that I'm pretty intrigued. I think the game being competitive helps, and there's some great options on Kansas City to stack up the team. So I kind of like the fact that it's a tough matchup here.
Ryan, who are you liking the most on the Kansas City side? Are you feeling a stack here? Is there anything that you're leaning, I guess, in terms of how you want to approach this game?
Well, my fantasy cruncher froze, so it's going to be hard to
Thanks, Fantasy Cruncher.
Thanks, Fantasy. I'm seeing some LaShawn McCoy usage here. It's only 6% owned. As far as quarterback, let's see here. In this last scrape, I'm not getting much. I'm not getting much Mahomes at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's I'll have to throw out the fact that like sometimes median projections they don't accentuate like some players like Mahomes where it's kind of a tough matchup. It's kind of the pay up to be contrarian option this week because Mahomes is only projected to be 4% owned, and that's about a third of his usual ownership. So it's kind of compensating for it.
The problem from what I'm seeing is especially with quarterback ownership is so spread out this week. It's kind of hard to get super contrarian, because in my opinion, like any ownership hurts your player, it hurts your EV. So, the more, and I think it's kind of like an exponential issue. So it hurts even more ownership you have, the more it actually hurts you. And the problem with this is we got like 9% owned Deshaun Watson. So everyone's getting hurt equally almost. But maybe I need to look at my model a little closer because I'm getting no Pat Mahomes, and obviously he's a stud. So maybe tomorrow that'll be different.
I mean, it's certainly going to be a tough matchup against New England's defense. They've done a really good job of pressing the pass game on the air. Though it's worth noting, according to the PFF grades, they have come down a little bit, or at least normalized, down to a 74 coverage grade from PFF, which is still good, but a little bit closer to the middle of the pack than the high end that they were earlier in the year. And I think their DVOA numbers also have dropped a little bit relative to the year too. So a spot here, Kansas City's high-powered offense get it going in any situation, but certainly here should be getting a little better. Alex, I want to ask you about the New England side because I'm really intrigued by James White this week. I actually followed the entire game log just to get a read on what happened last week where he got a bunch more runs. And he actually was running out of regular formations as well, out of the shotgun, was in there for pass catching downs, was also just running the ball a lot more, as you could just see looking at the box score. From the game flow, too, they just went to Michelle less after, I think, the first couple of drives, and just pretty much turned it over to James White. Going against Kansas City here gives up a lot of rushing yards, over 140 rushing yards per game. Are you willing to go to James White this week? Do you trust that workload, or is it just New England being New England, Alex?
So I'm not really excited about the Patriots here. Tom Brady, he's really seen his numbers drop this year. Only 6.7 yards per attempt, and this is playing some of the weakest teams in the league because their division just is full of trash teams. So that's a big red flag for me. I think James White is kind of intriguing because there was this kind of narrative that he's going to get you 10 to 15 points every week, and then he went out and got like 35. So I'm afraid people will kind of realize that's not realistic, and maybe lean towards White a little bit here. He doesn't really stand out to me a ton because while he catches a lot of balls, he's not very involved running the ball. So compared to other running backs at that price point, the workload is a little bit questionable.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think there's certainly some risk there. But, the 14 carries last week are a season high for him. And Michelle's been so ineffective that maybe there's a chance they start to go another direction because that offense, Tom Brady's been less effective, as Alex mentioned. So I'm hoping that White can get there. So, Brian, you be the tiebreaker here. James White, is he appealing to you at all here? Are you trusting the fact that he suddenly got a massive workload last week that you might be able to keep that moving forward?
Right now I am. So if unless things change, I'll have some White, and I have him as my second highest correlated running back too, with their running back with their quarterback after Eckler. So you could theoretically, it's a little weak correlation, so I don't know if I'd really push it that far, but you could do like a White with Brady and run it back from the other side.
Would you go with Edelman too in that stack?
I can tell you how many I have.
Also, are you more predisposed to do 2-man with the quarterback, or do you try to go more 1-man with quarterback?
Yeah, I have a decent amount of Edelman in this one too. But yeah, I would set a rule that if it would have to have the quarterback to have both of them in the same lineup.
Right.
And so that if that happens with my groupings and everything, then I just let it happen.
Okay, so that makes sense. Alex, how about you? Are you feeling, I mean, you said you're not too big on Tom Brady. He hasn't been that great this year, and there are certainly some troubling numbers. 61% completion rate on the year, which is down quite a bit for him. Accuracy, not terrible, but definitely some signs of flaws here, which you could also pin on the offensive line. But are you getting to any Edelman as well, or is it just mostly an avoid for you with the Pats overall, Alex?
I think Edelman is intriguing, but uh, the I'm a little bit worried because they do have so many guys in the mix now. Because Sanu and Dorsett, I assume, are kind of back to full strength here, and Edelman's price has gone up a lot. He's in the 7Ks and 14.6 on fantasy draft. So that's a little bit higher than I would like for a guy that he hasn't been that efficient this year. Only 66% catch, 11 yards per catch. So that's about 7 yards per target. And for that price point, that's not really that exciting.
Eric Smith in the YouTube chat asking a question. If Kansas City has a decent shot at being the top stack, you wouldn't want to play James White, would you? I would think you would want to play James White if you're stacking Kansas City, because that would assume that White might be playing from behind. But Alex, what do you think about that take or that question from Eric?
Yeah, I think that I kind of agree with you. It's kind of the game script you're going with. If Kansas City stacks, if the Kansas City stack goes off, you're going to assume New England puts up some good points. And that would lead me to think that every player on the Patriots would be a little bit better than average.
Yeah. All right. That makes sense. So hopefully that helps out, Eric. Let's keep going here. We got another game. This is one of the main event plays on the slate. Christian McCaffrey in the Carolina and Atlanta game. His price has fallen slightly after he was uber chalk in week 13, and he busted. So that was tough for a lot of people out there. But he and Devonta Freeman now, actually, I don't know if this ownership changed enough, but it's a little bit more in favor of McCaffrey now, but still decent ownership for both McCaffrey and Devonta Freeman. And Devonta Freeman is half the price of Christian McCaffrey on most sites. So, Alex, out of these guys, adjusting for price, who do you think will have more of this week? More Freeman or more McCaffrey?
I really like this game. So I'm going to start off with that. I think I'm going to have a lot of exposure to this game. McCaffrey's not going to stand out a ton as like a point per dollar play. So it's going to really depend on how much value you can find to fill up your lineup and then fit him in. And I think that Atlanta is one of my favorite stacks of the week, so I'll certainly have him as a run back in a lot of lineups. He's my top projected player of the week, so I think that he's going to be the guy. If you have money to spend up, you're going to want to go with McCaffrey.
Where are you shaking out with the Atlanta's stacks? Because I'm curious if you would be willing to go to Freeman with Matt Ryan in the stack, given that Freeman does get a good amount of targets, just under 5 per game. He does see pass game work and also gets a good amount of red zone targets too. Would you be willing to go to Freeman as part of that stack, or are you thinking more of a Julio, Ridley, Hooper type stack with Ryan?
I'm not super keen on pairing Freeman and Matt Ryan because what happens when you pair any running back with your quarterback is a lot of that salary is not correlated together. So as a disadvantage, where like 100% of the work that Julio Jones gets is going right to Matt Ryan's point totals. So I much prefer Julio. And I think the fact that Ridley has been winning people the money is going to drive people to Ridley when I think Julio is the better player. And I mean, there's a great chance Ridley has a good game, but I'm thinking Julio is a better shot.
Ryan, how about you? How are you feeling about this Atlanta passing attack here, or Devonta Freeman? I guess the entire offense got a lot of guys in play who could be appealing here. What are you getting the most of?
I like Freeman too. 20% right now. Not a ton of their passing game, which is a little surprising for me. 15% Julio and just a little bit of Ridley and Hooper. And you know, to kind of piggyback on what Alex is saying with the running back correlations, they're really not that strong, and you kind of need them to be. You kind of need it to be strong to make sense in terms of increasing your EV compared to just taking two people with a higher projection, right? Than you otherwise just normally would. And if you're taking like a player of lower skill or projection or however you want to define it, and that correlation isn't there, it's, you know, you're just killing your EV over time. And with McCaffrey, everyone thinks of him as this huge, pass catching back, kind of when he first started here. But I'm seeing from what I have in my model, I have him as like half as correlated as James White, for example, right? So like he wouldn't be in any of my my possible running back quarter QB RB stack options. I just wouldn't allow it.
I think the way that Alex explained it about the salary being accounting for a lot of the rushing yards, I feel like that was I haven't heard anybody explain it that way, but that does make a lot more sense with thinking about the correlations. I mean,
that makes sense. I mean, honestly, there's not a lot of difference between salary, projection. All these things are kind of equal. If you think about it, you could just convert projections to a salary or salary to a projection or EV to, as long as, or turn it all into a probability. If you want, there's a whole bunch of different ways you could do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Anything else? I guess we should talk a little bit about DJ Moore. I know, Alex, he's been a guy that you've had projected pretty well in your projections for a while, and he's come on strong throughout this year. Has seen a little bit of positive TD regression, but still not enough, and the price point still works. Is he somebody that you imagine you'll get some of this week, Alex?
Yeah, definitely. I think that I do like stacking up a wide receiver with my Atlanta stacks on the other side, so I would prefer DJ Moore to Christian McCaffrey maybe a little bit. But his price has gone up a lot across the industry to kind of compensate for the amount of work he's getting. So I think that not a tremendous edge as far as salary goes, but he's a good player, and I'm definitely going to have him.
And I feel like we have to talk about this guy. I was very big on the Tyler Higbee chalk last week. That was one that ended up paying off pretty well in that spot against Arizona. But Ian Thomas is going to be one of the chalk tight end plays of the week. Greg Olsen has been ruled out. And Ian Thomas has some decent days in the past, and he's at minimum price on most of the sites. So, Alex, are you going to be playing Ian Thomas this week, or is he just the guy that you'll get to if you get there and the price opens up? Or is he a priority? I just don't see it being. I feel like people may chase it like that Higbee play, but I don't think it's the same at all.
I think that Higbee, people got a little lucky, including myself. Usually when you see these tight ends kind of get more snaps, that doesn't always translate to a big fantasy projection. And that's kind of what I'm feeling about Ian Thomas. I mean, I think the work will be there, but then converting that into fantasy scoring is going to be a much harder task. So I think if he fits your lineup, and you need that $2,500 guy or $5K on FantasyDraft, I think that he makes sense. He's probably the best projected of those guys. But as far as fades of the week, I mean, any tight end that hasn't done anything is probably going to be up there. So a few weeks ago, I faded Mike Gesicki when he was like 20% owned. I mean, like, it's just like shooting fish in a barrel almost.
Would you look at the target share for Thomas as an indicator of what he could do, or does it not quite hold water because the fact that Olsen's been in the mix? Because I know it's one that we talk about, but Thomas has only been targeted on 14% of his routes, and tight ends do tend to get targeted a little bit more when they are running routes. So would that give you any pause, or does that not really enter the equation?
Yeah, that is a metric I look at for sure, is how often are they targeted on the field, because if you take the work and the amount of snaps, multiply those together, you get a pretty good estimate. So he's targeted a little bit less than average, but still a decent amount. The main red flag for me with Thomas is just his career numbers aren't very good. 70% catch rate, only 8.8 yards per reception. So that's not really a lot of production per target even.
Yeah, and only a 56% catch rate for him on the year too. So that probably due for some positive regression there. But I think we're on the same page here. But Brian, how are you feeling about Ian Thomas? He's a minimum price play, and sometimes people just want to play the minimum price guys. You can afford the guys that you really believe in.
Yeah, if he had no ownership. So before this ownership was updated, I did have him, and now I'm not even going to run it. But at 20%, I could tell you I'm probably not going to have much of them. But I faded Higbee last week, so what do I know?
Hey, look, if you didn't expect Tyler Higbee to have 100 yards and a touchdown, I don't know what you guys were thinking. That was a lock for me. I'm telling you, I know I got lucky with that one, but I had so much Higbee. I was just like, if this works, great.
What was he, like 30% owned or something like that?
And I had 50 because I was just like, how is this going to go wrong? But It could have easily gone wrong. And in this spot too, this is not Arizona in terms of being a pass funnel to the tight end. So maybe a different situation. And for what it's worth, DVOA wise, Atlanta giving up just a 1.2% boost to tight ends on the year compared to the 40% or whatever Arizona gives up. So maybe a different situation, but we'll see. We'll see in a little bit. Let's keep going through these games. And guys, again, hit that like button. It helps us out, especially because we change streams midway. Washington at Green Bay. We talked a little bit about this guy, but Devontae Adams was strong as chalk in week 13. Now his price is up, and another good matchup against Washington. So let's talk about him and I guess the rest of the guys here, including Aaron Jones, who has been really down the last few weeks. Alex, anything appealing for you on this Green Bay side? And Devontae Adams, you talked about him, but give me your thoughts on him as well.
Yeah, I think with wide receiver, there's so much variance from week to week that you can justify pretty much anyone. Devontae Adams doesn't stand out as one of the best of the bunch, but if you're going to have Rodgers stack, I mean, you pretty much have to have him because all the other guys are so unreliable. Last week I was under the field and I kind of paid the price, and I think I might just keep going that direction because I feel like Green Bay. Last week I was kind of concerned a little bit less than this week where they're facing Washington, and Washington is a really weak team. I think Green Bay is favored by almost 2 touchdowns, so what that equals is kind of a low variance spot where Green Bay will put up 20 to 30 points and then kind of slam on the brakes if they don't have to really score touchdowns.
Brian, do you have any feelings here for Green Bay? I know we talked a little bit about Adams being potentially one of your fades of the week, but maybe that makes the run game more interesting to you, given that he do have, as Alex mentioned, a 13-point spread favoring them at home.
Yeah, actually, that's exactly what this last crunch I did is showing. But it's not Aaron Rodgers; it's Jamal Williams fitting in there. So I think that I might make some changes on that by tomorrow at noon. So don't hold me to that one. But yeah, if Adams at 20% or whatever, it looks like I'm going to be, unless that changes, I'm going to be, he's going to be my fade.
Alex, how are you feeling about the Washington side? We saw Darius Geis have a big week last week, but this week he should be competing for touches again with Peterson. And also I think Chris Thompson's expected back in unless that's changed recently. It seems like a spot where they have still committed to the run and they're doing their best they can to not let Dwayne Haskins kill them, despite the fact that your Dwayne Haskins stat update still a 4.5% interception rate, a 14% sack rate, and a 1.5% passing TD rate, all of which are the worst on the slate. So Alex, how are you feeling about this Washington side and pass game, run game, anything appealing to you at all?
No, I think that Darius Geis, he got like 30 points last week, but the workload wasn't there. He just did a lot with the touches he got. As he mentioned, he's competing with Chris Thompson and Adrian Peterson. I think that to really believe in Geis, you're going to have to believe that because of his strong week, they're going to up his workload. But that's an assumption I'm not really going to be willing to make, especially given that the price tag's not that favorable.
Brian, anything appealing for you here on Washington side?
So I had a ton of Geis in my best ball leagues by accident. And since I got eliminated last week, I have zero of I have no Geis.
Oh, man.
In anything, including DFS. So
he's going to be one of those guys. Like I will say now, I'll plant my flag for this. Week 15, 16, 17, we always have these running backs who have monster days where they just shut down guys down the stretch. Geis is going to have a monster like 200-yard day one of these weeks. I don't think this is it, but I think there's going to be a week where they're like, all right, Peterson, you're done. Thompson, what are we doing with this? And that's going to be a week that Geis goes off. But I feel like this week, ownership not there, but it does feel like a point chase. As Alex mentioned, the opportunity just not there. But Geis,
especially at the end of the year. At the end of the year, weird stuff happens sometimes too.
Yeah, and if Geis gets that workload, I will be there because he really did look good, and he's evaded tackles well. I mean, the big run that he had is going to pad his yards after contact stats, but just under 5 yards after contact so far for Darius Geis, and he's intriguing. Let's keep going here. This spot, so I put this on here, and I really don't know what to think of it, but Pittsburgh at Arizona. Arizona is now allowing over 305 passing yards per game. I thought there was some risk last week to Jared Goff because Arizona blitzes at a pretty high clip, but even against the bad Rams offensive line, they really didn't get enough pressure to make Goff any weaker in a noticeable way. Goff was still doing his thing as best he can. Devlin Hodges, Duck, if you're one of his friends like I am apparently, he's in a good spot. He's not a guy who's thrown it a lot. They clearly do not want to throw the ball a lot with him, but he's, as Mike Tomlin has said, he's not killing them. So Alex, Hodges at all, is this even a consideration for you given that Deontay Johnson pretty affordably priced, and Arizona's just given up so much reduction to pretty much anybody who's throwing the ball?
don't loathe it because Hodges has shown that he's been really good when he has passed. He's averaged 8.7 yards per attempt so far. Now, I think that is kind of an anomaly, so I'm not really buying into it. But if for some reason you believe that Devin Hodges is an above average quarterback, then everything else is going to be great. Like the prices on James Washington. Well, actually, that one's a little bit high now.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, they go hunting together. That's why.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about
Of
that.
course. You got to adjust for that. That's another couple grand on you every time.
These guys are a little bit too expensive for me to get to, but um, I, it's kind of based on this assumption that Hodges isn't any better than Mason Rudolph. So the team as a whole has done pretty poorly in passing this year.
Brian, do you have any lean here with Devlin Hodges and the fact that, he does have a big opportunity here if he's allowed to throw, which is the risk?
Yeah, no, I don't have any of them right in this most recent crunch, but if I did, it would like Alex said, it would be with Washington as his most correlated wide receiver.
So here's some fun stats for you guys. I'm just going to throw it out there because we want some reasons to like Devlin Hodges, and I'm intrigued. I will say this: I'm intrigued the more that I look at it. In a clean pocket, so which he should be seeing a lot of. It's a pretty good offensive line for Pittsburgh. And they do a good job keeping him clean. They did a good job keeping Mason Rudolph clean, and that didn't work out for him. But he does have 85% accuracy in a clean pocket, a 104 QB rating, decent 9.4 yards per pass when he is in a clean pocket. And even when he's getting pressured, he's actually been pretty decent, 75% accuracy on those dropbacks where he's pressured. Still an 82 QB rating, which is probably better than it sounds. That's right there with some guys who are actually you would consider to be good quarterbacks. So I'm intrigued by Hodges. I don't know that they kind of let him do enough, but just going to Deontay Johnson at a cheap price point, maybe Deontay Johnson and Vance McDonald, given that tight end spot. I am intrigued by it. Arizona side, Alex, anything for you there?
I think that I'm interested in Kenyon Drake because since David Johnson and Chase Edmonds came back last week, we kind of know what to expect now. And he was their lead back. He got most of the work, and that's been consistent with the Cardinals all year is that they give one guy most of the work each week. So I think that at kind of a mid-range budget option, Kenyon Drake is appealing.
Brian, anything here for you on Arizona?
Yeah, Drake. Same with Drake. 25% in the last crunch I ran, and he burned me last week. So let's run it back. See if he takes more of my money.
Definition of insanity, Brian.
You have to be insane.
DFS. We'll go a little bit crazy.
I think my highest owned D is the Cardinals D in this last tied with a few other defenses, but pretty low ownership, cheap price, unknown QB they're going against. Could be worth a flyer.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I will certainly do that with the 90% Devlin Hodges I have. Got to hedge a little there.
That's contrarian. Yeah, go for it.
What the show's all about, overload on Devlin Hodges. Anytime you get a player with an animal-based nickname, I am there. I am there for it. Miami at the Jets is a game I wanted to hit on. Sam Darnold continues to be mostly up and down, but he has a good spot here going against Miami's defense. One of the best get-well spots in the league. Is he a consideration for you? And also, I think it's worth noting, I hate this because this burned me in the same matchup at Miami a couple weeks ago. Robbie Anderson's coming on strong again. His price is reasonable. Going against Miami, who gives up massive plays over and over again. Alex, Jets stack here. Sam Darnold, one-offs. What is appealing to you in this spot for the Jets against Miami?
Honestly, I think Miami is a little bit underrated on the defensive end because on a per-play basis, they have been able to hold teams to pretty reasonable yardage. I mean, we've seen some good games too, but I've heard that maybe Le'Veon Bell won't play this week, which would create a lot of value. I don't want to speculate too much, but then Powell would be pretty good. But if Bell is in, then I think Bell is a good play too.
Yeah, apparently I was going to mention that, but Le'Veon Bell apparently has an illness which caused them to mispractice. No indication yet which way that's going, but as Alex mentioned, that would certainly open up Bilal Powell and I guess Ty Montgomery maybe to get more work. I don't know, but Powell definitely would seem like he'd get a good amount of work. Brian, any interest for you with the Jets here going against Miami, who maybe a better defense, as Alex mentioned? They have done a good job getting some pressure recently, but still given up almost 400 yards per game on the year.
The Jets D, I have some interest in, and just a little bit of Demaryius Thomas. Not much. A little Crowder. But yeah, not a whole lot.
Okay, I'm a little more intrigued by this game than you guys are. I would like to see the weather actually, which might be worth looking up. But I'm curious about this one because I feel like Miami down the stretch here, every quarterback, and this is not anything that crazy, but they had a run there of kind of having guys not go off against them. But I had a lot of Carson Wentz last week that ended up being one of the better plays on the slate. Him and Alshon Jeffrey were really the guys who helped me to a decent week last week. And I like running back stacks with Devontae Parker because I just think he's a monster. His price is up, but he's had over 10 targets in his last 4 games. Had his best game of the season last week, and he's just looking really good to the eye test. Alex, would you have any Parker here? I mean, even if you don't like the Jet stack, is Parker somebody you're willing to pay up for, given that his price is on the rise?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that having a guy in a game where there's not a lot of ownership is going to be beneficial, and especially if you have a Jets running back, there's some correlation there. The price is affordable to some extent. And the other guy I would have some interest in is Patrick Laird. Gotta throw it back to our man Peter Overzet, who joined us a couple weeks back. Really pushing for this guy, but he was just before his time. And now with Kalen Ballage out for the rest of the season, we saw last week Laird got the majority of work over Myles Gaskin, so I might take some shots on him.
Yeah, brutal running matchup here against the Jets defense, just giving up 75 rushing yards per game. But Laird has been targeted fairly well in the past game, so he could have a decent floor there, even if he can't get much going on the ground. And the expectation, he's not going to be the most efficient runner, but can he be worse than Kalen Ballage? Probably not. Can a corpse be worse than Kalen Ballage? Probably not. Brian, any interest at all in these Miami guys? I know you said Jets defense, but maybe you still have some Parker or Gesicki or the aforementioned Patrick Laird.
I want to over under bet on this Laird ownership here. 8%. Doesn't it feel like with all the DFS talk out there, he's going to be more like 15 probably, right? I don't know. It seems like everyone loves this guy. I kind of think the ownership on Miami is going to be a little higher than what you guys have laid out right now. Parker's been hot. Right, he's been in a lot of winning lineups too, so that's probably going to give him a little bit. 11 is pretty close though, probably to what it is. And ownership kills your EV. So if it's gonna be high as I think, I'm gonna probably try to fade even more Miami than I have in this most recent crunch.
Oh man, I guess I've enjoyed watching these Miami games recently, and I know I'm a sucker for every sport. I'm a sucker for bad teams playing. That's just who I am as a human being. But Parker, I just really have a lot of fun watching. And Fitzpatrick, he's a reckless player who will throw it into really spots you shouldn't be throwing into, and that could certainly give DFS upside. But wouldn't be shocking to see Parker have a down game here. I just find it hard to not believe. Like, he had big games against Buffalo. Like, he's had really good games in every spot. So I'm willing to keep going there. I want to turn it over to you guys real fast. Alex, any players or games that we haven't hit on that you find particularly appealing that people should be thinking about?
I'll throw some love to this Chargers-Jacksonville game because I think that Leonard Fournette's always pretty interesting because of how much of the workload he gets, and he really is going to benefit the Jacksonville Jaguars overperform this week. The price, it varies a lot, but depending on the site. Most appealing on FanDuel. But then the reason I like Fournette also is because I feel like this game is going to be competitive, and the Chargers on the other side, I feel like they got some good fantasy guys in Hunter Henry and Keenan Allen. So you can make a nice game stack out of this one.
How are you feeling about this game, Brian? And also, I guess, well, first that, but second all, any other games that you want to hit on. But tell me your thoughts on Jacksonville and the Chargers.
Well, let me bring them up. Jacksonville and the Chargers, I definitely have a little interest in. I mentioned this earlier with Eckler as kind of a RB QB correlation play. He's for a running back. He's heavily correlated with his QB. Not a ton of interest, but some. Hunter Henry, as I mentioned, I faded Higbee last week for Hunter, and it didn't go so hot. If anyone else had him. And his ownership is up, fairly high for a 13-game slate, and I'm still getting to him. So he just must be that much of a good value. So I'll end up having some Hunter. I haven't looked at any cash game stuff yet either, just GPP stuff. So but Fournette is always an option. And I'm probably going to have some Melvin Gordon, even with that ownership.
Yeah, the 11 and 12 targets for Fournette in the last 2 weeks is pretty crazy. Definitely a big jump. I don't know if that's a sustainable jump, but that's certainly going to give him more upside, especially for the full point PPR sites. Brian, are there any other spots that we haven't talked about that you feel like are worth hitting on, either a player or a game?
Someone who's burned me in the past, but I'm probably going to go one more time, is Jonas Smith, tight end. If his ownership holds at 2-3%, something like that tomorrow, I might take some flyers on him as a cheap tight end option instead of Ian Thomas, for example. But let's see if I got any other quick. Will Fuller is a good. Are we going to hit that Houston Denver game?
No, so that we just don't cover all of them, especially on a slate of this size. So yeah, if you have any guys you want to hit on, just feel free to.
Just Houston Denver, just in general. Especially, I think 9% for Deshaun Watson. I think that's going to be a little higher. It's going to end up being a little higher than that, and I might actually adjust my own numbers for that. But I'm still going to have some of him, and if you got him, you're going to have he's highly correlated, of course, with DeAndre Hopkins, and Will Fuller is questionable right now, right? I believe, which is probably keeping his ownership down. But I'll have some Will Fuller in there too.
Yeah, Will Fuller is questionable with a hamstring injury right now, but
you could bring it back with Sutton, who's monsterly correlated with Allen.
Yeah.
So I'm probably, unless things change by noon tomorrow, I'll probably be over that game quite a bit.
Also, real fast, Alex, these are two guys we haven't touched on, but just looking through, I feel like we should hit on them fast because they are always relevant players. Lamar Jackson, any thoughts on him? He's going against a tough Buffalo defense, but we know he gets to go in every week. He's going to be under 10% owned. So would Lamar Jackson be a guy you would want at all this week, Alex?
It depends on the site, I think. What you're really looking for, or what I'm looking for, is at least one guy to pair him up with, and Marquise Brown and Andrews are really the only reliable options. On Yahoo, these guys are kind of cheap. So that'd be the site I'd be most interested, because these guys are expensive on every other site compared to their production. And I think that is leading me off of Jackson.
Brian, any interest at all in Lamar for you?
A little bit. And isn't Brown questionable too? Marquise Brown, I think. So that's keeping his ownership low, which is nice. So that could be a correlation play. And I'm not getting a lot of Mark Andrews. Actually, I got none in this most recent one. So
it's tough price for this matchup. So that could be a factor for sure. And just one last guy before we do our contrarian picks and our fade of the week. Dalvin Cook. I'll ask you first, Brian. Do you have any interest in Dalvin Cook this week? Again, another guy who has been injured throughout the week. Ownership perhaps down because people concerned about that clavicle / shoulder, but he's going to be in there and he seems like he's going to be a full go.
Yeah, no, not in my most recent crunch.
Okay. Alex, how about you? Any Dalvin?
Yeah, I mean, this is a fantastic spot versus Detroit, because Detroit, who knows if they'll even be able to put drives together, because they're on the third string guy, David Blow, and Minnesota's defense is pretty decent. And what that's going to equal most likely is a lot of running attempts for Minnesota. So I think Dalvin Cook has a lot of potential here.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I also think too, people I know earlier in the week talked about Alex Madison. He would have been a smash play if Cook were out, but now that Cook is in, I think it's getting a little too cute with Madison. I don't think the workload's been there for him enough. Let's do the fades of the week, guys. And of course, hit that like button, and a quick shout out to Fantasy Draft, who is of course the official sponsor of this show and the official home of Rake Free DFS. Go check them out right now at fantasydraft.com or download the Fantasy Draft app and use the promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, for your free 7-day trial and your chance in the world of Rake Free DFS, which will help you out quite a bit, helping out our boy Brian right here, saving $57,000, which is outrageous amount of savings. Let's do our contrarian picks and fades of the week. And Brian, you are the guest here, so I'll give you the first crack. Who would be your contrarian QB for week 14?
Okay. Jimmy G.
All right. I like it. And you said Kittle would be your preferred stack target with him?
Yeah. And Debo too, I think. Debo's would be my second.
Got it. All right. Alex, how about you? Contrarian QB?
I'll go with Drew Brees. I think that he's been underwhelming so far this year. The matchup for San Francisco is pretty tough, but I gotta go against Brian's pick. So I think that the appeal with Brees is that a lot of the productions in Michael Thomas. So if you have the two of them, you're in good shape, and then Jared Cook is somewhat affordable.
All right, and man, this is a tough choice. I like both these guys. I'm torn between Jacoby Brissett and Duck Hodges, but I feel like I planted the Duck flag, so why not? Devlin Hodges, come on down. You are my contrarian QB of the week, and I'm intrigued by the spot. I talked myself into it throughout the course of that, which sometimes works out well, sometimes works out poorly, but I'll take some stabs at Devlin this week. Alex, I'll go to you this time. Contrarian running back pick for week 14. Who would it be?
This is a really tough one, I have to say. I'm not seeing a lot of names I like on this list of under 5% owned running backs. Let me pull up my numbers here. I think that maybe, honestly, like I don't like any of these guys, but I'm really struggling here, man. Chris, can you save me and give a pick real quick?
This is a good way to gamble. Force bets in. This is how you do it.
Yeah, it's definitely
even if you have no opinion, you gotta make a bet.
You gotta have conviction regardless. We go up to 10%. I'm going to James White for mine, so you can go up a little bit more. I love James White. I'm really buying in that they just realized that Sony Michel does not have it this year. Also have some Sony Michel just in case the Patriots it up. I probably won't have any Rex Burkhead or the other various assholes they run out there, but James White is a dude I like quite a bit, so he is my contrarian running back. Brian, do you want to give one before we'll let Alex?
Yeah, I mean, if we're kind of breaking the rules here a little bit,
hey, up to 10,
I'll throw a few out there. Like Jamal Williams, LaShawn McCoy, Kenyon Drake, all those guys look like 5-6% owned. That should be pretty good. Duke Johnson on DK, and Austin Eckler maybe, possibly you can hit some big numbers with him. Yeah, not a ton that you're in love with. I like your James White pick too.
Thank you. Yeah, Brian, you're coming to full tout. You named like 5 guys. You're learning so well. Alex, who would yours be?
All right, I came up with one. Only 1% ownership. So this one's pretty contrarian, but Jalen Samuels, I feel like so last week he got 32 out of 56 snaps. He had 7 rushing attempts to Snell's 16, so he's going to really get his work in the passing game. But the price, it's not real good. But it's kind of hard to find a lot of guys in that range, so I can see myself having some Samuels.
All right, and I'll go back to you, Brian, for contrarian wide receiver pick. Who would it be?
All right, Will Fuller is looking, and I think that number goes up if he's declared in early enough, especially. And same with Marquise Brown.
Alex, how about you? Contrarian wide receiver.
I'll go with Sammy Watkins. I mean, he's been ice cold recently, and that's what I like in a contrarian pick because we know that this guy's got a lot of talent. Matchup couldn't really be much tougher, but that's why we're seeing such low ownership. So I'm willing to roll the dice here.
I'm going to go Kenny Golladay, who is under 3%. So I'm being a real hero with this pick, but I just like Golladay. The workload not going to be as great with Blau. Blau could certainly struggle again, but he did take deep shots. It's like 5 deep shots, 5 throws of 20 plus yards in that game. I think that's going to benefit Golladay. And I think too, the fact that Golladay was the only one getting those deep targets, it was not Marvin Jones, kind of intrigued me. I think they may be trying to use Marvin to give Blau some safe routes underneath. And I think that's going to open up opportunity for Golladay, whether they capitalize or not. Blau is a 3rd string QB for a reason, but I'll take that stab against Minnesota's kind of overrated pass coverage. All right, Brian, here's the fun one. Fade of the week, the one that people can yell at you for on Twitter. What are you feeling here for your fade of the week?
I think I've said it already. Devontae Adams, right? Yeah. I've mentioned that he's right now. He's my fade, and I am not a tout, so I want to say I do all this stuff on data, and so this might change tomorrow by noon. I'm not trying to lead anyone anyway, bet your own money. You don't have to force in bets too. By the way. So yeah, right this second, Devontae Adams. If I end up with like 5% of them, hey.
Hey, that means you faded him in 95% of lineups, and that's good enough for me.
That's right.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think I'm generous with the term fade. I think if you have under the field, to me that counts as a fade, unless it's like 1%. I think,
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll be under the field most likely.
Yeah, I think people get real butthurt about that. They assume fade means 0. I don't think it means 0. I think it just means like I'm not as big on them. But you have to cover that ass. That's why you guys are both top 10 DFS players. That's the whole thing. Alex, who'd be your fade of the week?
I have a little bit of a different take on this because I actually like it when people complain about my picks here because it feels good to have someone else to blame than yourself. So that's why you should sign up for Osmo.
Very generous of you.
Well, if you win, it's all you. If you lose, it's all me. So like it's a win-win. But my fate of the week is Jack Doyle. I think that Ebron being out will lead to more Doyle routes, but because he was already the number 1 tight end before Ebron went down, what we're seeing is maybe a 25% increase. He had a great game last week, and his price went up a ton. So I'm pretty unenthusiastic if he is going to be the second highest owned tight end.
All right. Yeah, Ian Thomas would definitely be a good fade of the week. But all right. So I guess I will go to It's tough because the ownership really isn't that crazy on most of these guys. I don't have a ton of conviction in this one, but I'll go Michael Thomas just because I think it's a tough matchup. I am intrigued by the idea of him being able to beat zone coverage, and he does seem like a guy who's just so good at finding spaces in coverages. But it's such a good pass defense for San Francisco, and they're going to get good pressure. They have a ton of speed, so maybe he just doesn't get there enough, and I feel okay about it. But that's not the best fade of the week, but it is a fade. All right, Brian, we'd like to turn the floor over to our guests so they get a chance to plug whatever they want. You do have a Twitter handle. You do have an imposter out there selling lineups in your name. But you could plug whatever you want. If you want to plug that guy sucking or plug your own Twitter, do what you need to do.
I will not plug him. I don't even know what his new handle is. He keeps getting banned and then pops up with a new one and then gets more Twitter followers than I have in like a day. My actual handle's my name, Brian Hooper __. And I just started a YouTube channel too. You could Google my name or my handle, Brick75, and it should pop up.
Yeah, go check out Brick75, passing you up on all the tournaments out there, but also check out the YouTube channel. Brian's a very smart guy who's been a part of this community for a while, and we appreciate him doing the show. Alex, any closing words for the folks before we call it quits here and enjoy our weekends before week 14?
Yeah, Brian, thanks so much for coming on the show here. It's always great to get an inside look on what some of the other top guys are doing, so thank you.
No problem.
Fantasy Draft, one of my favorite places to play NFL because you win so much more money. Like 1 week, I haven't won the main event, but I finished third and I got 30K. On other sides, that would have been maybe like 15K. So I won an extra 15K because of the no rake. And I like 15K. That's a lot of wings. And thanks everyone for supporting the site, and looking forward to the rest of the season.
Yeah, we appreciate all you guys for watching. Hit that like button before you go. Tune in tomorrow. It'll be Alex on the deeper dive live before lock. It's doing this usual bit with Ben Rasa and Laffy, one of the better shows you'll find, prepare you as you're building lineups for that last stretch. And live before lock tomorrow will be me and Nolan Kelly. So we'll be doing that. Josh is, of course, out. So we'll have some fun with Nolan instead. So tune into those tomorrow. But we hope you guys have a great week 14, and we'll see you guys again soon. So good luck, guys.